Hello and welcome to Endemic Times. My name is Amira. There is a serious issue happening here in the United States that is sadly going largely undiscussed, even though all the statistics and realities of the situation would seem like it should be a talking point on every news outlet. That discussion is that of Black women and the increased rate of which they are dying from violence. In 2020 alone, 1,821 Black women and girls were killed, which makes 5 women and girls a day. Even more startling is the rate of which their murders are going unsolved. The number of unsolved homicides of Black women and girls rose by 89% in 2020 and 2021, compared with 2018 and 2019. This is a travesty and only touches the surface of what we are going to discuss today. Now let's get into it. The Uniform Crime Report for 2020 shows that at least 4 Black women and girls were murdered each day in 2020, although experts fear that this may be an undercount. FBI statistics show that Black women face a homicide rate 3 times higher than white women, with their chances of being murdered increasing dramatically. Nationwide in 2020, homicide rates increased by nearly 30%, but the rate for Black women and girls rose 33%. When it comes to Black women and girls, 3/4 of homicide victims died from gunshot wounds. One of the most egregious statistics to come out of all of this data is that while the deaths of Black women and girls rose more dramatically than any other demographic group, the solving of their killings fell faster than any other demographics in nearly 24 cities. A very common thing I came across while researching this topic was the retort of police agencies saying things akin to being low-staffed and not having enough detectives to allocate the workflow. Specifically in Los Angeles, Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher, who oversees the LAPD detectives, said that in general, there have been too many killings and not enough detectives to keep pace. Los Angeles in 2020 to 2021 had 752 homicides, which was an increase of 46% over the 2018 to 2019 year. This has been a very commonplace argument being made by police chiefs and departments over the last couple of years, but surprise, surprise, it's actually not true. But we'll get into that in just a moment. Taking a look at our nation's capital, the homicides of Black women and girls more than doubled. 25 Black women were killed in DC in 2020, compared with 10 the year before. No women of any other race were murdered in the district that year. In Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was murdered by police, homicides of Black women and girls tripled in 2020, from 10 women and girls killed to 33. This is a drastic increase that even experts in law enforcement and criminology are not quite sure what is leading to this rise of homicides of Black women and girls. Well, here is my theory. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Looking at where these numbers have increased, it is in a lot of the places where protests occurred because of the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, for example. Now, I'm not saying that those protests shouldn't have taken place. Taking a glance at these increases and the corresponding locations, it does seem, however, to coincide with where the protests and even some riots took place. Could this be why violence towards Black women and girls is increasing? Sadly, I think this is some, not all, but some of the collateral damage of the ideology and propensity of pushing division that the media did over the last couple of years, and the sad result that those narratives are emboldening a racist with a gun. Racism and racists exist. People with mental health issues and access to guns exists. Using division and ideology that talking heads know is pushing people's buttons doesn't help. I say all of this because when looking at the numbers of where Black women and girls are seeing the highest rates of homicides is not even in the Deep South. It's in the Midwest. Black women who live in Wisconsin or Michigan have higher homicide rates than Black women who live in Mississippi or Alabama. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but I can't help but think that this is the sad result of the protests that took place after the George Floyd murder. The protests became such a hotbed for discourse for everyone, and a lot of that discourse was vitriol for the right, and I'm afraid they got way too aggressive because of this. What do you think? Is this far-right BLM revenge? Killings of Black women and girls is not new. It's just sadly hardly ever discussed on mainstream media and other institutions. Many have stayed silent about the crisis of violence against Black women that are usually expected to care for others, but often do not receive the same level of care. Feminist movements and protests love to garner this support and almost expect Black women to be there to help. But where are those same female activists when this happens? Media also plays a crucial role in how people perceive a problem and what they care about. Some families of murdered Black women and girls say that another factor in clearance disparities, which is basically the solving of cases, is because their killings draw less attention. Violence against Black women and girls continues to receive little attention, and often data doesn't even get reported. Black women play a critical role in our society, and during the pandemic, they were by far the ones that helped to keep the economy going. They were overrepresented among frontline workers during the height of the pandemic and are traditionally the caretakers for their families and neighbors. They didn't have the luxury to stay home from work. They had to get up every day and keep the economic system and the economic engines of this country running. That's why having this level of increase in their deaths is so devastating. Because of their roles as breadwinners and caretakers, when Black women are killed, it leaves deep voids across entire communities. Sociologist Cheryl Neely stated, "When you kill a Black woman, oftentimes you kill a cornerstone of the community because there are a lot of people tied to her." As I have said repeatedly here, what the media does or does not show you coincides with what people en masse believe or not and think about or not. It all plays a role in the broader discourse, which is why having this level of selective media coverage and outrage over issues or lack thereof, people, and sadly, situations like this, where all of the data is there in seeing the increases in violence and death against Black women and girls, but because it's not flashy like a young white girl that gets killed by her boyfriend, that in the course of trying to solve her murder, 10 bodies of missing people were uncovered. It's not to say that Gabby's life and horrific murder doesn't matter. It does matter, though, to the countless families that are not high profile without large followings or that don't have access to a lot of money and people in high places and people that can also donate large funds to help up the rewards for information. In Los Angeles, for example, an outcry from Black families erupted last January when officials announced a $50,000 reward for helping to solve the fatal stabbing of a 24-year-old white UCLA graduate student. Private donations raised that reward to $250,000, and a suspect was quickly apprehended with surveillance footage. And this is just one example of the disparity in policing and treatment of cases. We see this all too often, where high-profile white victims are shown in the news cycle for weeks, and that visibility and elevation of their stories leads to more information on their cases. If we treated every lost life in that way, imagine the possibilities. Imagine the decrease in crime that might occur. I'm not saying that this is going to solve all of the problems and that this isn't to say that nothing bad will ever happen. But the fact should be that every life should matter. But sadly, when it comes to policing, getting them to care about everyone and not just those that they are paid or influenced to protect is a big part of this problem. And policing is a big part of this discussion. In 2021, Minnesota became the first state to establish a task force on missing and murdered Black women, and other states, including Illinois, Wisconsin, and Chicago, are following suit. Understandably, the role of police and the policing in communities does differ based on who you're speaking to, but the general consensus does seem to be that this cannot be only confined to law enforcement. It has to be a discussion in the broader spectrum of what is making all of this occur and the best way to mitigate these events. The biggest takeaway here is that you cannot solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. Black women shouldn't be dying like this. The solving or clearing of Black women's cases decreased dramatically in 2020 and 2021. The share of homicide cases for Black women and girls cleared by police, either by arrest, charges filed, or identification of a suspect beyond the reach of authorities, fell to 59% in 2020 and 2021 from 67% in 2018 and 2019. For white women, it also dropped, but by a much smaller margin, from 78% to 73%. For white men and boys, it remained at 58%, and Black men and boys had the lowest clearance rate of all, dropping from 45% to 41%. So across the board, policing efforts to solve cases dropped, but as we see by these numbers, they dropped most and more dramatically for people of color, specifically Black men and women and Black boys and girls. Their lives should matter just as much as a white person's. Here's a quick look at just some of the still unsolved cases of murders of Black women. Lanaya Murphy, a 20-year-old anti-violence activist, was fatally shot in the right temple last January while talking on her phone in a parked car on a South Side Chicago street. Miss Murphy, a 5'3" woman with a booming voice and broad smile, helped lead a youth mentoring group and had started her work after recovering from a gunshot wound to the head when she was 16. She was killed and her murder has still not been solved. The body of 16-year-old Tyone Theus, I'm really sorry if I butchered that name, was found on the side of a freeway in January with a gunshot wound in her neck. The body of Mekiona Johnson, a 23-year-old, had been found in her car in September 2020. Rewards were offered in both of their cases, but they remain unsolved. Brittany Hardwick, a 20-year-old nail stylist and mother of a 3-year-old named Justice, was found in the early morning of December 12th, 2020, fatally shot in the neck in her black Ford Focus that was parked in her boyfriend's parents' driveway. Like I said, this is just a snippet of the amount of unsolved murders of Black women and girls. And a big part of the discussion when it comes to murders of Black women and girls that almost always seems to be missed by mainstream media is that a lot of these killings are happening when Black women call police to help them, but they end up being killed, either by the police or because of the police in some way, shape, or form. Again, the role of police, or lack thereof, plays a crucial role in this discussion. Talking heads on mainstream media have been loving using the defund police movement as a way to act like this is why the police can't do their jobs, because of things like staffing issues and being underfunded. Well, would it shock you to learn that that is actually complete bullshit? Well, yeah. Recent data revealed that in 2020, the police were not defunded and that the number of full-time staff in police departments has not changed. In fact, in sheriff's offices and federal agencies, employment has increased in law enforcement. Additionally, reports of stagnant or increase in budgets during 2021 and 2022 in police departments were found nationwide in 34 from the 50 largest cities in the US. So no, the police are not being defunded and they are not understaffed. It's a matter of giving a shit and doing what's right and wanting to do something about it. I have said previously here that policing, the way it's structured and who is hired, needs to change because too often police departments do not represent the town, the city, the district that they are policing. And the level of protections for officers in their collective bargaining agreements that keeps them from being prosecuted for crimes and protecting them from review is rampant in almost every single police department in the country. A lot of our problems start and end with police. And that's why I will continue to say that the way that the police are structured needs to change. It's not a defund the police or abolish the police view, but looking at all of this, do you not see this as a problem either? If you would like to see more details on everything that was covered here, please check out the links in the description box below. There was so much more that deserved a lot more coverage. I just couldn't get to it all because, attention spans. Well, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments below what you think about all of this. I find this really heartbreaking and I just fear for my friends because I do not want them to become another statistic. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and share it with people that you think might find this information helpful. And as always, remember to stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.